Hello, Dana Lyons here with the Cows with Guns report. Today I have the honor of interviewing Thomas Linzey. We're in Seattle, Washington in the United States, in North America, just south of Canada. Thomas is over visiting from Spokane. Thomas works with the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund. I got it right.
First time.
Which is, Brett will flash their little website there on the screen. That's it. Okay, thank you, Brett. Thomas, I've been interested in the effect of corporations on our democracy for a long time. Recently, I went to Democracy School, which is a 2-day workshop that you put on. Really enjoyed it. Really appreciate the work you're doing. A lot of the folks who are listening today probably don't know that much about. I think everyone understands there's a problem with our democracy. Not everyone understands, how the corporations are affecting it. Could you just give us a quick general overview of how corporations and constitutional rights are affecting the democracy?
Sure. I mean, we do most of that in the Democracy School, as you know, from sitting through it. And essentially, we start from where people are now, which is communities that are impacted by different things, like toxic waste incinerators or landfills or factory farms or sewage sludge coming in to be disposed of or dumped in their community. And a lot of these communities say, hey, wait a second, we don't want that here. Our idea of sustainable agriculture means not having a 15,000 head hog factory farm owned by one of the largest corporations coming into our community. And it's those folks, when they rise up around the kitchen, they come together around the kitchen table and they say, hey, wait a minute, we don't want this here. It affects us in a bunch of ways and we don't want this here. That they learn very quickly that under our system of government in the United States, that they don't have the power to say no to whatever's happening to them. And the reason for that is, as you know from going through the Democracy School, is fairly complex. But in essence, we have these legal doctrines that have been concocted over the past 150 years, mostly by corporations, which have in essence given corporations more rights and powers than the communities in which they do business. And it's that raw fact that communities come up against, and they say, well, we want to stop this, but the legal system says you can't. You don't have the authority to do that. And so people have begun to say to themselves, well, democracy is something different from that. Like what we learned in kindergarten about democracy being, it's not about corporate minorities being able to override community majorities. It's supposed to be the other way around.
Right. Like I remember very distinctly, I'm sure we all remember this, 51% of the people vote. That's what wins in our type of democracy. And I think the instances you're talking about is where you can have 95% of a community saying, no, we don't want this going on in our town, and the corporations manage to squeak around that.
Yeah. I mean, the system's built to have a mistrust of democracy, which means that if a community like Seattle or like Bellingham or any other community for that matter in the United States would say, we don't want big box stores in our community. We don't want Walmarts or Costco's or Targets or those types of things because we've said as a community these are not good for our economies. These are not good for entrepreneurship because they're monopolies on these types of retailing activities. That if a community said no more big box stores in my community, what they find out very quickly is that the legal system itself is contoured to make sure that they can't make those decisions. So if the city of Seattle would say we don't want big box stores here and pass a 1-paragraph ordinance saying no big box stores, we're prohibiting them within the city of Seattle, the first thing you see is Walmart or Costco or Target suing the city, not only to overturn the ordinance, but to punish the municipality with damages to be paid to the corporation for interfering with something called the corporation's constitutional rights, which is, a lot of people watching this may not know. Communities know it a lot more now because they've been involved in these fights. But corporations have the same rights as you or I. They have the rights of persons under the law. And it's this weird thing when you first hear it, it kind of bends your brain a little bit to think of corporations being persons. But Walmart, for example, has First Amendment free speech rights and Fourth Amendment rights against warrantless seizures and searches, those types of things, and equal protection, due process rights, and all the other stuff that we think of as accruing only to natural persons in the United States. The problem is when you have Bill of Rights protections held by a corporation, it's much different than them being held by you or I, because they have much greater resources to use those things to sue our local and state governments to actually reverse what we want and what we need.
Right. Now, like I've been aware of this, and it's been frustrating. Like I've been saying to myself, well, what can we do about it? And something that you've been involved with. There's a story that I find really inspiring. There are small towns in Pennsylvania, if I'm recalling the story correctly, that have passed ordinances making it illegal for corporations to do certain types of business in their town. Like I think the first town was over hog farms. They didn't want a giant hog farm that was going to pollute the water and lower the property values. But can you just tell a little bit about that story, how it got going, how I believe the city council or the community council unanimously passed this ordinance?
Mm-hmm. It's happened in 140 different places now. So we have about 140 different communities, not just in Pennsylvania, but also Maine, New Hampshire, Virginia. Maryland now has one community has passed something along these lines. That 140 communities have stood up and said on their particular issues, whether it's gas fracking, this new thing in the Northeast where corporations are coming in to blow up the ground to actually get the gas out, and it's causing all kinds of problems. Some communities it's gas fracking. Others are corporate hog factory farms. Others are toxic waste incinerators, landfills, these bunch of different issues that communities are facing. But the communities are moving forward in a smart way. I think there are two ways to describe this work. One is that there's a smart revolt taking place, and the other one is that it's collective, nonviolent civil disobedience through municipal lawmaking. So communities coming together and saying, hey, we're not just going to lay down in front of the bulldozer when it comes in to put the Walmart in. We're actually going to seize our municipal government and use that municipality to drive into place a new system of law. And that new system of law is not just going to stop the big box store from coming in or the corporate hog factory farm. It's going to begin to dismantle the legal doctrines that are in place that enable the corporation to do what it does. And so when I say a smart revolt, and it all happened, as you know, in a very small community in south central Pennsylvania that was faced with a hog farm, and they stood up and said, we're going to ban corporate farming from our municipality. And all the experts and all the lawyers and all the professors said, you can't do that. The system of law says you can't do that because you're going to run afoul of corporate rights. And these folks said, well, then we're going to get rid of corporate rights in our municipality as well. Because if that's the key piece that prevents us from governing our own community and driving our own values, majority values, into law, then we have to move beyond just the saying no. We actually have to begin to frontally dismantle these doctrines that are in place that enable the corporations to do what they do to us.
Yes, well, that is a mouthful, and that's complicated, and but I wanted to share with my friends on the YouTube channel just to get a taste of this. I deeply believe there's a serious problem with our democracy, and I think what you're doing is on the cutting edge of challenging it. It's like the laws are set up so that the corporations have more power. It's like, no, I'm sorry, if an entire community, if my town is overwhelmingly, well, even 51% against something, we should be able to decide that.
Yeah, it's not so much a serious problem with democracy. It's the fact that we don't have a democracy. And sometimes when you tell people that, it makes their head swim. But in democracy school, we actually point out exactly how they don't have a democracy here. And it's the myth that we have some kind of democratic system operating. It's only these communities running up against a system that systematically strips them of any democratic lawmaking authority within their own community, where people can actually see it, feel it, and then take action on the basis of that.
Right on. Where can people learn more about this? What can someone who knows there's a concern, they want to do something, how do they start?
Well, we're a public interest law firm, so we provide services for free to folks that have a problem occurring in their community, which they think that there needs to be organizing around. Our webpage is celdef.org, so that's CELD as in David, F as in Frank.org. So it stands for the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund. That's the best way to get in touch with us.
Right on. And any last words on just general philosophy advice you want to share with the American people as we struggle for our democracy?
That it's time to revolt. I think it's past time. I think it's past time to allow ourselves to be pushed around by a very small number of people who actually use these corporations to override what majority wishes are towards things like sustainability.
Right on. Thank you very much. Thomas Linzey with the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund. I got it right.
Yeah,
thanks so much for being here. We're here in Seattle. This is the Cows with Guns Report. I'm Dana Lyons. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Dana. We will fight for bovine freedom and hold our large heads high. We will run free with the buffalo or die. Cows with guns.
That was beautifully and sensitively done. Sensitively done.